Our final speakers tonight are here to share a very, very tragic story. Our speakers are Amy Hearn and John Sciacca. Amy would like to introduce you to her younger sister Jessica, who was a young woman full of life and potential, a life lost at 16 years of age on a cold night in June 2012. John was Jessica's school principal, and John's story will demonstrate the trauma of one life lost and how it spreads through the community. Would you please welcome Amy Hearn and John Sciacca, please.
Hi, my sister Jess is 2 years and 8 days younger than me. On the 27th of April this year, she would have turned 18 if she'd never decided to get into a white VR Commodore on the 14th of June 2012. Jess and I were really close growing up. We shared a bedroom, secrets and lots of laughs. We would drive Mum crazy over fighting 1 minute and being mates the next. Jess always wanted to be grown up like me. She wanted to be at school when I was, and then later on she wanted to be partying when I was. Most people Jess met, she was quickly friends with. She had a really warm personality that sort of drew people in, as well as a great sense of humour which could keep me entertained for hours. Jess loved singing and had an incredible voice, as well as pretty good guitar skills. I'd say to her, "Can you play this song?" And within about a week she would have figured it out. I loved Jess's caring nature, which was evident when she brought home a Kelpie cross pup from a farm she worked at. The poor thing was apparently the runt of the litter. Tiny Tot was snuck into Jess's bed most nights and is now the laziest Kelpie I've ever seen, thanks to Jess's TRC. Jess was pretty bright in primary school, but once she got into high school, she got pretty bored. The only thing that really interested her was the agribusiness program. Jess found that she loved horses and farming, which led her to meeting a girl called Gracie at the local camp draft. Gracie lived in Nathalia. Meanwhile, Jess was having a tough time at home. She hated school and she wouldn't go. She'd stay out late and had us all worried and really frustrated. Mum was worried sick, Dad was really hard to talk to, and I was starting my Year 12 VCE, and the focus was meant to be on me this year. Jess bargained with Mum and was eventually allowed to live in Nathalia with Gracie. She promised to go to school every day and help Gracie with her horses. Nathalia Secondary had an agriculture course like Mansfield, and Jess was back to attending school regularly. We'd see her every few weekends, but it worried me when Mum was driving by herself to pick Jess up. I'd end up going with her trying to study in the car. I really resented Jess for this and often wished she'd disappeared. Then Jess met a boy called Zach in Nathalia. She became close to him and was soon living with him, his grandparents and younger brother. Jess's school attendance dropped off, and she was told by the principal that unless she picked up a game, she wasn't allowed to come to the school social. The social was held on Thursday the 14th of June 2012, and Jess didn't go.
At 11:30 p.m. on Thursday the 14th of June 2012, a single vehicle collision occurred in the Shepparton Road on Bath. Jessica Hearn, 16 years old, died at the scene. The following is an extract from the police investigation summary from this collision. Prior to this collision, a white Holden sedan was approaching the scene, travelling at a high rate of speed. Jessica Hearn, 16, was an unrestrained rear seat passenger. An unlicensed 17-year-old male was driving the vehicle, while another 17-year-old front seat passenger was the third occupant. The driver of the two other vehicles gave evidence of being overtaken by the Holden on the Shepparton Road. They estimated the Holden was travelling at a speed between 180 and 200 kilometres per hour. This was prior to the collision, and the vehicle was being driven all over the road. As the vehicle approached the scene, prior to a slight curve in the road, the driver oversteered to the right and applied emergency braking that locked the wheels of the Holden. The Holden then travelled along the grass reservation to the right of the roadway while spinning about its vertical axis in a clockwise direction. The vehicle travelled approximately 145 metres before the front passenger side impacted on the power pole. With such force, it sheared the pole at ground level and moved the pole approximately 5 metres at the base. The vehicle then continued to rotate clockwise until it skidded rearwards into a tree, impacting with the driver's rear side taillight assembly. At this time, Jessica Hearn was ejected from the vehicle and she impacted with the tree. Other vehicles stopped to assist and emergency services arrived, but Jessica Hearn did not respond and she died at the scene. Jessica sustained major and unsurvivable injuries to the chest and abdomen, which would have resulted in more or less immediate unconsciousness and death. The two 17-year-old males were later treated for minor injuries. As they grappled with the magnitude of the collision and the trauma and death of Jessica, they debated whether they should leave the scene before police arrived. Weather conditions were clear, but the road surface was wet from recent rain. The vehicle driven by the male driver was unroadworthy at the time of driving, as the rear tyres were underinflated and had insufficient tread depth. These factors contributed to the collision. At the time of the collision, it's estimated the driver had a blood alcohol concentration of between 0.081 and 0.099%. The front male seat passenger eventually provided further evidence regarding the driver behaviours behind the wheel. He stated that the male reached speeds of 205 kilometres per hour. Both the passenger and the driver actually took photos of the speedo to verify these speeds. While driving the vehicle, the driver took a photograph, this is the driver, took a photograph of the speedo that indicated a speed of 205 kilometres per hour. The metadata recorded on these photographs includes a date, time and latitude and longitude of the images. This is the speedo photo before you now. The speedo of the vehicle in one of these images, the one indicated, was taken approximately 850 metres before the collision. So consider that for a moment, being responsible for a vehicle yourself that was travelling at these sorts of speeds, 205 kilometres per hour, at night, wet conditions, unroadworthy, under the influence of alcohol, and using one hand on the wheel while you're trying to control a vehicle at 205 kilometres per hour and taking a photograph. At the Melbourne County Court on the 24th of May 2013, the male driver, Stephen Duffy, was convicted of culpable driving causing death. He was sentenced to 6 years to jail and has a non-parole period of 4 years.
My name's John Sciacca. I've been working in the area for 21 years as a maths teacher, and about 4 years ago I had the privilege of, and still am, the principal of Nathalia Secondary College, and I see the Nathalia people here say g'day, and all the other people that I know, g'day. So you've heard about the sadness, you've heard about the tragedy. I made a commitment to the Hearn family after Jess was buried that I'd participate in one of these nights. You heard from Amy, I was the one that said that Jess couldn't go to social. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but you know, someone's lost their lives. It's a young life, and Jess was just fantastic. But she did have that element of high risk, and I've seen it before, and you just say to yourself, get through 6 months and things will be right. She didn't get that chance. So Jessica's family was devastated. But I'm here to talk about the ripple effect. I'm here to talk about what happened with the school community. And I've got students here tonight, so you know what I'm talking about. So this happened on the night of our school social. Fantastic night, 600 people. In the community centre, we share it with St Mary's, and we had a fabulous time. It came off really well, it was great. And so me and my colleague, he said, we cleaned everything up, everyone must have gone home. He said, you want to give us a ride back to Shep? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So off we go, and we just talked about how the night was just terrific. And it was wet, you couldn't go that fast. It's fine, we come along to Bombartha on that curve, and you always slow down because the whole stack of curves on the way to Nathalia, you've got to be really careful. Anyway, so slow down, we see two figures just running out on the road, and we weren't sure what that was, and my colleague goes, well, I reckon one of them was actually an ex-student, not Zach, but the other one. And kind of said, well, gee, that's a bit weird. So we kind of pulled over, and once we pulled over, we kind of saw that there was a collision on the left. And so we get out of the car, and you know, I've never been at one of these things before. I only heard stories, and you know, something's bad. You can see that the car's completely wrecked. You see these other two who are kind of pretty affected, and my colleague and I'll never forget this. We looked at each other, and it's amazing how you just work things out. And I guess people that are professionals do this just without thinking. They know exactly what to do. And we get there, and we see the two people here on the side, and we actually, there was someone else in there with Jess, and my colleague and I just looked at each other, and I remember my colleague saying to me, you know the other one that's our ex-student, I didn't get on that well with him, but you know him, how about you duck over there and I'll go in and have a look at what's going on. And I knew in my mind that something bad was happening in towards the trees, and I suppose in reflection, I probably should have been the one that went in. But I didn't, because you kind of in that moment you go, yeah, that's the right thing to do. So I looked after the two that weren't that injured, but we discussed what had happened, and my colleague went in to do CPR, and he said to me, you know, we've done the training at school, and he goes, I'm fine, I'm going in. So he went in, and then when I was talking with the two boys, I found out that it was Jess. So if things run through your mind, you just think, well, all right, he's in there, it should be all fine. And by this stage, search and rescue are there, police don't arrive, and you kind of know that by the way that they were moving around, that things weren't too good. So the paramedics were taking care of the two guys, making sure everything was all right there. So I kind of had the opportunity to walk towards Jess, and my colleague didn't even know who it was. That's how horrific it was. And you've heard it tonight. And I guess when you hear things, but you're not actually involved in it, you don't understand. I heard those things tonight, and when they said that metal cuts through skin, it does, and my colleague didn't even know who it was. So I had to tell him. I said, it's Jess. He goes, Jess? I said, yeah, you know, Jess, she's in your science class. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the look in his eye. And he said to me, I tried everything I could. They worked for 20 minutes in there. And yeah, so he was pretty affected. And this is the shot here. I didn't know that Simon took that at the time. But then later on you kind of see all this stuff, and it was pretty tough. So you kind of get through it. You go the next day. We had it was our report writing day. I didn't forget it either. So you kind of weren't set up for the grieving and stuff that you're trained to do when there's a critical incident in a school environment. But we got all ourselves organised, and we had to have a place where people had to come and talk about it and grieve, and we did all that. And you get in this task-driven mode of just looking after people, and that's the way you rock and roll in a school. And it's probably in a lot of institutions where things get pretty emotional. You just got to look after people and move on. But my colleague, he couldn't come back to work for 4 months. He couldn't sleep. They called it post-traumatic stress. He couldn't drive past the accident scene, the collision scene. And he got into Melbourne and we got him a compassionate transfer, but he was a fantastic teacher. And I couldn't have him in my place anymore. But we got him where he had to go. So that was fabulous. Myself, you kind of, first 6 months, I don't know, like I said, I didn't choose this. I'm just driving home, just wanted to get home, wanted to get to sleep. It's been a big day, I had reports to do. Thought I was going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe pump out a few more. This was the last thing I ever thought could ever happen. And I remember going home, and you kind of, I jumped into bed and I said to my wife, Sue, she goes, "You all right?" I said, "No." And, you know, that was a long night because I was the principal of a school and you go, all these things rush through your head. I was the one that said that Jess couldn't go to the social. I knew that, you know, that Nick and Jimmy and Amy were going to get the news. And you kind of, you start to blame yourself for a lot of these things. So, I know it was hardest for my Year 10 cover order students that knew Jess really well. The other students at the school knew her well too, but I knew my Year 10s. You know, Year 10s don't need to go through this stuff. Year 10s should just be studying, playing their sport. That's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be going through this sadness. But a lot of people in the community were affected, not only in Nathalia but also in Mansfield. So I've said what the hardest things were. The hardest things were to tell my colleague that he worked on someone that was actually in his class. The hardest thing was knowing that it's affected his career and he's had to move on. The hardest thing is knowing that such a tragic life was lost. As a principal, you kind of, you're a principal, and I suppose all of us do the same stuff. We just care. We just want to look after people. And I really felt like I let Jess down. So the little challenge was for me. I said before I didn't choose it. My colleagues didn't choose it. I went into teaching. I love teaching. That's what I went in for. I didn't think that this would be kind of the cards that would be played out for me. So first 6 months were pretty tough. You know, you get into the mode. You've got to do what you've got to do. You've got to run a school. You've got family to look after. You've got commitments. And you know, you man up. You can do it. Everything's fine. It ain't fine. And you've got to search for help. So I know there's other people out there that would be coming across the scene for the first time. And so the ripple effect is real, folks, and it's big. So all I can say is get the help. And people have said it before, you know, I've got a great family. I've got other peers that, you know, rang me up. I had counselling from the department, which was just sensational. And you kind of get things back on track, but it takes forever. It does, it just takes so long. So you probably heard all these things before, but the time doesn't really heal anything. Like, I still feel guilty, even though I've done the counselling, I still feel that there's an element of guilt there. And what you really do is cope, I suppose. And I hear what other people have said, that you go home and family is the people you kind of protect the most. And when people said before, you go home and you check the carport or you check the bedroom, that's what I do too. So the message is, look, you're young, look, we all make mistakes. You just didn't get a second chance. She made a bad choice of being in that car that night, regardless of everything else that happened. I had another student that could have been in that car that night, and because she chose not to be in there. And she's in year 12. So that's hard. So if that's one message that gets through tonight, which I promised the Hearn family I'd do when we buried Jess, is that I'm a true believer in the Coolheads. That if we can just get you, like if that phone goes off while you're driving, don't even look at it, put it on silent. If you are in a car, wear your seatbelt. If you don't have confidence in the driver, don't get in. You've got a gut feeling, surely you know to use it. If you at all are distracted while you're driving, just pull up on the side of the road and ring someone up, they'll come and pick you up. So if you can do those types of things, I just hope, and we're all here tonight presenting and talking about this in the hope that one person gets the message and that we don't have this effect for, that really devastates the community. I know people from Yamurka and Nathalia, the Bendigo Bank's pretty good up there, and they do fund a lot of things. And we've got a youth driver education course called Green Light, and the Bendigo Bank's just subsidise it heaps. And you can rock up into those Bendigo Bank and Nathalia and Yamurka, and you can take on this youth education course, and it runs on the 23rd of September, and you just rock in there from early next month and pick something up, and there's a lot of money being put into it. So if you're around those areas and you want to take that opportunity, please do. I'd really like to thank Glenn and Amy, because I've never been to one of these nights, and I've got a son that's 15 and he'll be 16 soon, and he needs to be here next year. So with that, thank you.
I don't know all the details of what happened in Nathalia that night. I don't really care because the end result will always be the same. I do know that what happened in Mansfield the next morning. Mum woke me up at 7 o'clock in the morning and led me up the hallway. The whole way I was saying to her, "What's happened? Is Jess okay? Is it about Jess?" She sat me down on the couch and Dad told me that Jess had been killed in a car accident overnight. I didn't believe them at first. After that, all three of us just sat on the couch and cried. Dad went to work and it was the start of school holidays, so Mum and I stayed at home. Granny came over to our house, and then all the other people started coming and bringing flowers. The house was full of flowers. Now that smell makes my stomach churn, and I really don't like it. After that morning with Mum and Dad, I couldn't cry anymore. People told me I had to be strong and look after my parents, and I don't think I cried for about 6 months. At the start, it was easy to pretend that Jess was still in Nathalia and she'd be home soon. We had to plan a funeral for Jess. How do you choose a coffin for a 16-year-old girl? We had to choose flowers, prayers and songs. We had to choose clothes for her that went right up to her neck because of her abdominal and chest injuries. I still couldn't cry at Jess's funeral, not even when they played one of her songs that she used to sing. The next thing we had to do was Zach's trial. That meant victim impact statements, court dates, and facing the person I believed to be Jess's killer. To feel the sadness and intense anger at the court dates was like reliving an accident. Zach got 6 years of the 4-year non-parole period. I've let go of most of my hate towards him and believe that he has a life sentence like Jess and like us. He knows that his actions contributed to Jess's death and will have to live with that for the rest of his life. I think that is worse than a jail cell. Life will never be the same for any of the people affected by Jess's death. Recounting this story has been a traumatic experience for John and I, but if it changes at least one person's mind towards driving, then it's all been worth it. Thank you for listening. Glenn, John and I wish you safe travels on the road.